the things that's true about this whole perspective of embracing your power is that when it gets tight, you have it in you to address the real problem going on. As you are in pursuit of success, it really forces you to make some choices and decisions about what is important to you and establish some boundaries so that you can make sure that you end up okay at the end of it all. In my conversation today, we're going to unpack a story where prioritizing yourself is the main thing that we have to keep in mind, even in our pursuit of success. Now let's get into it. For the longest time, I secretly wanted more. I often found myself shrinking to fit in, settling for what was comfortable, and even selling myself short. Once I finally accepted that we deserve success and we are blessed with the power to achieve it, I stopped playing small. I'm serious about building a life I love, and you should be too. I'm Denise Taylor of DeniseTaylor.live, and welcome to Embrace Your Power. I help women prioritize themselves, their success, and their happiness. Now let's meet this week's achiever, whose story will inspire you to embrace your power and go. Well, hello there. It's Denise Taylor here. And you know, I am always excited to have you join me right here on Embrace Your Power. Now, this is the place where you can count on me to always encourage you to build a life that you love. You see, around these parts, I believe that God has given us power to do it. And when we embrace that power, we can be, do, have, and achieve anything that we want. Now, I believe you're going to be divinely inspired to go after the things that God wants to do in your life. And when you do that, you are going to experience satisfaction and fulfillment that's going to light you up from the inside out. And that's what I want for you. I want you to experience what it's like to be lit up inside. Now, I don't know if you're listening to me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if you are watching on YouTube, but what I do know is that I am so excited to be connected with you. Each and every week, I call Thursday Treat Day because I know that's a day that I get a chance to connect with you here. And I am so incredibly honored to bring to this platform some amazing women who have been sharing from their career experience. You see, in this season, we have doubled down on your career success. Now, I know you may be saying to yourself, well, Denise, you said it was about building a life that I love. So how does my career success fit with that? Well, the reality is we spend a tremendous amount of time at work. We're either getting ready for work, going to work, or at work itself, not to mention coming home and preparing for our evenings to go back to work again. And so our investment of ourselves and our time into our workplace experience is huge. And I believe that you can have right expectation to get something in return for all that you invest there, the time you put in, the talent that you put in, the wealth of treasure that you devote to your career experience should be honored with more success that you want and deserve. And so in this season, I want to help you do that. And we have been on an incredible journey. We have had some women come to this platform and share so many great nuggets from their experience that it's almost as if you've been attending a masterclass. In fact, I encouraged you at the very beginning of season 2 to get yourself a notebook because I knew these conversations would be packed with so much wisdom that would help you in your career journey. So if you've got your notebook, I want you to go get it because this vision is continuing to unfold. Now, around these parts, I talk a lot about the success superpowers, and it may be your first time tuning in. And I want you to be on the same page as to the strategies for success that we believe will help make a difference in everything that you are looking to accomplish. And so let me just unpack them briefly so that you can be on the same page with us. Success superpower number one is see yourself successful. I believe that when you begin to envision yourself being, doing, having, and achieving the things that you want to accomplish, you then can begin to realize them in your life. And so it's so important for you to see it so that you can become it. So we start there in our success journey with seeing ourselves successful. Success superpower number two is shake off fear. Now, this one is incredibly important because the reality is we all get a sense of fear from time to time. And fear as an emotion is not a bad thing. In fact, I want you to have appropriate pause and concern anytime something should have your alerted attention. But where fear goes wrong is when it makes you stop in your tracks, when it holds you back from pursuing the things that you want to accomplish and do, then fear has overwhelmed you and you're not able to proceed. This is where you have to learn how to shake it off. And I believe you shake off fear by going back to truth. Who did God say you were, and what did he say you could do? He can back up that promise with the power of his word. Success superpower number three is do the work. Now, you got a role to play in it. You show God what to bless by what you do. So the work of your hands is increasingly important to accelerate yourself and bring him in to partnership with you. Success superpower number four is take care of you. And this is so important because the mantle of what you're believing for, that mantle of greatness is heavy, and I don't want it to take you out. So I want you to gird yourself up by taking care of all aspects of who you are with a game plan that covers every facet of you. And then finally, success superpower number five is hold fast to your faith. This is what's going to help you be resilient and go the distance to your success. Yes, you're going to meet headwinds and you're going to meet obstacles. You're going to meet challenges, but it is your faith that is going to make sure you propel through that to get the reward. Now, those success superpowers, they work for you, they work for me, they work for all of us. They work on every area of our life that we want to experience success in. And that's the reason why I share them. It's because I want you to take hold of them to change your life. Now, we've got another incredible conversation today. I have another fascinating guest who is showing up to share from her experience. And I want to tell you a little bit about Anjené, and then we'll get into this conversation. Anjené Abston is an accomplished business professional with over 16 years of corporate experience. Anjené focuses on operational excellence, security, and risk management. She loves to travel, and she's driven to be a lifelong learner and enjoys accomplishing goals using action plans. She holds a master's from Northwestern in information security, a bachelor's in marketing and sociology from Miami University, and she has attended an executive development program at Wharton School of Business, in addition to earning 7 professional certifications. By the age of 30, Anjené was promoted to vice president while working at an S&P 500 organization. She knows firsthand that finding balance while climbing the corporate ladder is critically important. She became an executive at a young age and had to learn to set boundaries and really figure out how to establish a plan for her life to overcome burnout. Now she is a life coach as well, and she specializes in supporting busy people while they achieve their life's ambitions. We had an incredible conversation with so many great nuggets that you'll pull out of this dialogue. So get your notebooks ready, and I'll see you on the other side. And so, Anjené, I want to welcome you. I want to give you a chance to greet everyone before we jump in talking about your career. So do me a favor and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Denise. So excited to be here. So I'm Anjené Abston. I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been living in New York City for the last 16 years. And I have a wide variety of experience in corporate America, mostly dealing with security and risk management operations. But when I'm not doing that, I'm loving to travel. I've been to over 40 countries. I feel like it's a really important part of my life and wellness to do that piece. So it's all about the balance for me.
Oh, I love that. I love travel too. So we'll have to connect offline about some of the places that you have been and where you would recommend that I go. Speaking of travel, one of the things that I learned about you is coming out of undergrad, you took advantage of the opportunity to work abroad. Now, we often hear about studying abroad, but you planned early on to work abroad after you graduated and you ended up in the Middle East. Tell us a little bit about that experience, why it was important to you, and what were some of your takeaways?
Yeah. So in undergrad, I ended up joining this organization called ISEC, which was all about bridging cultural gaps. And it was started after World War II in order to help prevent another World War. And after September 11th, they created a program called Salam, which means peace in Arabic. And during my experience with helping to run the local chapter at my college, I was really, really impressed by this program and the impact. And so I decided that I also wanted to go and participate. And at that time, they offered internships in 4 different countries. And by elimination, I selected Egypt. And I originally only went, I was only planning to go for 2 months. And it just kept going. And I ended up staying for a year because it was my first time out of the country. And then going by myself and then going to the Middle East. And somehow I just became more and more comfortable in talking to people and while I was there and falling in love with it. So I ended up doing an internship around marketing and event management. It was an amazing experience. I still have many friends from that time period that I keep in touch with and travel with to this day. And I wanted to go someplace that was completely different from America. A lot of people were trying to get internships in Europe or somewhere else. And I really wanted to go someplace that I thought was, completely different. And there are differences, but there are a lot of similarities. So it was very eye-opening. And I think it's helped me to see things through a different lens, even 16, 17 years since I've been there. That experience still holds a lot of weight for me. And I highly encourage people to live abroad, even if it's for a month or two, if you can. It just really changes your perspective and the cultural differences, but the similarities as well. So
I am a big traveler, and I could not agree with you more. From a standpoint of how it opens you up, it gives you broader perspective when you really begin to truly realize the world is bigger than what we know here. Now, you're from big cities, right? You grew up in Chicago, you are living in New York City, so that's a really big deal. So coming back from Egypt, you found your way to New York, much to your mom's dismay, right? She thought she was going to come home and be in Chicago with her, and you relocated to New York to move into this role as an administrative assistant for the head of security at a commercial real estate company. And I'll tell you what I found interesting, at least on the surface, and you even acknowledged this when we talked. The role he was looking for on paper wasn't necessarily a fit for you. And the reason why I wanted to kind of talk about that is because many of us are so reluctant to go for it, to put our name out there. In your particular case, you had a friend who was kind of involved in giving you exposure to the role. And so tell us about that experience when you were interviewing for this role and you're like, I am a marketing person and they are looking for an administrative assistant. And in the end, you ended up being what he desired or wanted. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah. So yeah, it was about maybe 6 months after I came back from Egypt. I was heavily looking for a position in Chicago. The economy was starting to turn a bit. It was around 2007. And my friend is like, send me your resume. And I'm like, I'm not leaving. And so in having, I sent my resume, I interviewed with the person that ended up becoming my manager actually for 11 years. And one of the parts of our conversation during the interview was, I have absolutely no experience in security. Why would you even want to hire me? Like, why would I be a good fit? And he's like, no, it's fine. You don't need to have security experience. I've got that. He's like, I need your marketing brain. It's a new program. I need you to help me take all the things that are in my head and get them on paper and help to sell and get support internally and externally for the roles and different programs that we're trying to implement here. So I was like, okay, I just went to Egypt. Why not go to New York, right? And so for me, my end goal had been to get my master's. So I originally thought, okay, why not? The economy is kind of, you know, turbulent at the moment. Why not go out there for 2 years, have this position, and then come back to Chicago to get my MBA, which is not what happened. But that was my thought when I was going into that plan. And I actually ended up having to come to New York for an interview with that person's manager. And I want to say that was like a Wednesday. And the next Thursday, I moved out to New York.
That is so incredible. And I hope that people can glean from that when you're in that position and you're interviewing, right, you really don't know what that person is looking for, because we often default to trying to check off any and everything on the list, right? You're going through the list and you're trying to check things off as it relates to your experience. But I think what was beautiful in terms of a lesson for what happened for you is you don't know what he's looking for, and you brought skills to the table that made you even more impressive a candidate, to be able to slide into that role really quickly, because a whole week later you was moving to New York City. And so you found yourself in the world of security. Now, security is a word that's used pretty broadly. Security relates to finances, it relates to physical structures, it relates to a lot. And in the idea of commercial real estate security, help us understand what the team was securing. What was the context of security you were involved with?
Yeah. So for that particular role, it was physical security, which traditionally has to do with guard management. So for us, it would be guards that were in the lobbies of the properties, and anything with pretty much tenant safety. So thinking about for that particular location, anything to do with like FDNY regulations that had to be done that were quite a bit after 9/11, and having to implement those and make sure that we had the training that was going on, and some investigations, and a lot of it had to do with the technology as well, which became kind of my sweet spot towards the end. But it was, the camera systems that are in the buildings. So from every particular space that we would want to put a camera system, not only the cameras, but the servers and the data for that. And then the access control. So who's allowed to go in where, and when, and the different tenants and their requirements, right? So one building may have one full tenant and they have one type of access control considerations, and another building may have 30 tenants and they have a whole slew of different access control, and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and negotiation and finding the right solution. So it was a lot of problem solving and just making sure we mitigated risk while also giving the convenience to the clients.
Yeah, and what I also loved about your story is how and you kind of alluded to it where you said that became my sweet spot, right? Where you moved in, you really kind of threw yourself into the pool of it all. You learned and learned quite a bit and became a sort of go-to person for some of the technology solutions that was behind all of that security facets of security you guys were maintaining. So tell us about that. What made you lob on to technology? What made you go deeper into developing yourself as you immersed and began to understand more about the world of security?
Yeah, so one, we were a very small team. So basically, you know, one of three people basically had to do any part of the security role, which was great because it gave me a lot of exposure to a lot of different aspects of security. But one of those things was technology, and the business model of the firm that I worked for was a lot of buying and selling of buildings. And so we would buy a building, and sometimes it could have completely different technology than all the rest of the portfolio, and you have to figure out how things worked. Um, because there was no centralized security department before my manager joined the firm, and then I came in a few months later, no one was looking at it from a very high level standpoint. It was all kind of vendor managed. So it was, a little bit of a hodgepodge going on. So honestly, I just got sick of people complaining about stuff, or like something's not working. We didn't have this video, this system, it was just a lot of complaints. And then trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I not get all these complaints? Because, that's not the kind of environment that I personally want to deal with. And so in going through that, I learned, okay, how the budget system works. How do you get money? What type of money? Is it regular repairs and maintenance, or is it capital, and which one and why, and what type of equipment can be done for that? And then it was also learning the different systems. So that was starting to really get out in the industry and going to conferences, meeting with suppliers and different integrators, and building a relationship and a rapport with them to make sure that we had the best program possible. And then that's just started doing a lot of refresh. And at one point, someone asked me, they were like, hey, I secured you $1 million to do something. Can you spend it? And I was like, yes, I can. I am prepared to do that and keep it coming. So, but then because of that, just like, diving into that, I was able to start securing funds for that program, and obviously creating a confidence in people that I could execute on running that program and keeping it up to date and respectable.
So I will tell you, that definitely doesn't feel as light as what an administrative assistant would be doing. And I think you were set up for success in a number of ways because you got a chance to get exposure and you were given opportunity to get involved with it. And so we're going to talk about your New York dad in just a second, but I cannot gloss over this story of you returning home and passing out business cards and the reaction from your family as they learned what you moved to New York to do. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll dive into the importance of understanding titles and roles.
Yeah. So when I originally moved to New York, I just told my family, I'm going to work for this commercial real estate company. I described the work, but I never told them what the title was. And so I don't remember how long after, it was less than a year, I came home and I took my mom, one of my sisters, and my stepdad to lunch, and I had my new business card and I gave it to them. My mom freaked out. She's like, you moved to New York to be administrative assistant? I'm like, it's not about the title. I'm doing so much more stuff. It's just where they could get the head count and where they could, get the financing for it to have this position, but I'm doing tons of other things. And so, it took her a little while to feel a little bit more comfortable about that. And I think it was maybe 5 or 7 years that I was formally an administrative assistant. I actually, after a while, like informally changed my title myself. But it was definitely um, a surreal moment. And I didn't think she would react like that, but I guess maybe subconsciously I did because that's why I didn't tell her. I was just like, yeah, I'm going, it's fine. Um, but no, as far as, the importance or the inimportance of titles sometimes and just how they need to be, kind of give other people a sense of what you're doing. So the title was administrative assistant. I ended up changing it to security and life safety administrator. So like formally from an HR perspective, it still said administrative assistant, but like from a business card standpoint, signature on email, um, it had administrator because I would try to get things done and people were like, who are you? What does it mean? Like, what kind of administrator, like assistant are you? Like they didn't understand why I was, participating in some of the things I was participating in. So I was like, I needed people to have a different mindset in order to interact with me the way that I needed to get things done.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that that wasn't a hindrance in your organization, obviously, because you went on to become a vice president there. So that's really, really key. But I think the reason why it's important to hone in on that, one is I love the fact that you didn't allow it to stop you from considering the opportunity. But I also think it's important to make sure you give yourself recognition for the work that you're actually doing. And I think that that's what you started to begin to realize was an inequity when you were attempting to execute with your responsibilities and you didn't have the corresponding title with it. And I love how you could nuance it so that you could get things done. But I think in hindsight, we have to develop the advocacy for ourselves at some point to recognize I'm doing way more than with this title and potentially the income. And I don't know about the circumstances with you, but with the title and the income are really yielding in return. And I really wanted to anchor in on that point because sometimes we don't think it's important when it really is important over time. And I think you recognize it became an obstacle for you, even in the execution of some of the things that you were looking to accomplish. And so I think it was great that you were even able to persevere beyond it, get promoted, and get access to greater titles. But I would challenge that, looking back, maybe we could be more aggressive or more and take more initiative or proactive measures to get it in line. But I do like the fact that it didn't stop you and you were able to advocate for yourself and become a vice president there. Now, one of the things that I also thought was really, really cool was listening to you talk about your hiring manager and the relationship that you've been able to forge with him. You referred to him synonymously as being not only your mentor and sponsor, but also being your New York dad. And so that tells me that you were able to forge a great connection, which I think is so powerful. Talk about that a little bit and let us know how that made a difference in your time there with him.
Yeah. I think there was a slew of different things that kind of created that environment. Obviously, each of us as our own persons and our personalities, but also the fact that it was a smaller team. There was a lot going on, and we just built this really great relationship during our time over the course of 11 years. And I mean, I started as his administrative assistant when I was 23, fresh, pretty much fresh out of college, right? And so, and he was, I would say, like his second career. And he had a wealth of knowledge, was willing to sit down and chat with me and give me advice about, the different, I mean, he had to teach me security for some extent of it since I didn't have a background in it. And then just management in general. So it was really great to be able to have that rapport with him and be able to, over the years, develop the ability to talk about anything, really. So that was very helpful. And it just became, even when my parents would come to New York and visit, and they would come and say hi to him. And they, I think, actually felt more comfortable about me being in New York because I didn't have a lot of family here. So they felt like they met him. He was taking good care of me professionally, and just seeing like the ways that he sponsored me over the years just helped to solidify that. And he's still a part of my life and someone that I can call and ask for advice. And so it was definitely bittersweet when he departed the company, and but it's still been a great thing to have him in my life, and also understand excuse me, also understand what a good manager looks like and what a poor manager looks like. And so when you start off having really great manager and sponsorship, it's really hard to be put in a position where you don't have that. Mm-hmm. And you can recognize it very quickly. So, because I've had that in a couple instances where I'm like, this is probably not the best place.
Mm-hmm. And what I love about it, and it's something that I say often, and it's actually been proven out in these conversations that I'm having with women like yourself about their careers, is there's always relationships that are making a huge difference in how you're able to navigate. One of the things that I say is that partnership accelerates progress, but strategic relationships will always accelerate your success. And what I hear you talking about when I hear you mentioning him is he is very much a strategic relationship for you. And we talk a lot about friends, we talk a lot about partners and even mentors, but you bring up sponsor. And I love the term sponsor. And I would love you to unpack that and help us to understand more about the value of having sponsorship in the workplace, and maybe even more about how he made way for you as a sponsor.
Yeah, so I feel like a sponsor is someone who, it doesn't have to be your manager. And in this particular space, he was my manager, and even my current manager, I feel like, is a sponsor, because there's other people that I've worked with who have no real connection to ensuring that I move forward, but they still do it and have the conversations. Where do you want to go? Where support do you think you're going to need? Or this is where I think that you should get involved. And then also talking about you when you're not in the room to help promote who you are and your capabilities. That's a huge piece, I think. And even helping you get to the table in some instances, right? So making a way to get you there. Mm-hmm. I feel like for this particular sponsor, he would bring me to meetings that he didn't need to bring me to, but I said I wanted to learn a little bit more about X, and he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm meeting about that next week. Do you want to come and let me sit in and learn and grow from that? I think that's like different than just, your typical leader or just a manager. Mm-hmm. So it's more well-rounded, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I agree with you. When I think about every opportunity that has opened up for me at the next level, it happened in rooms I wasn't in. So I wasn't even there to speak up for myself. And I always like to describe it this way, that the handles to get in that room are on the inside of the room. So somebody's got to open the door and let you in. So even if you get to the door, you can't open it. Somebody in there has to know you, know your skill set, know your interests, know what you're bringing to the table, so that they can open the handle of that door to the next level opportunity, invite you in. And so I always believe that those relationships go two ways. And one of the things I heard you say that I think is so key is that you showed interest. You expressed the interest in wanting to learn. And I call that healthy curiosity, right? Where you made it known, I am interested and I am available and I am willing. And you put forth your own effort behind that to pursue it and to always make mention of it. And so I think that's one of the things that makes relationships like that work. there are some people who don't believe the value of sponsorship and or mentorship because they're expecting that other person to be the one that initiates. But it really rests with you to demonstrate your healthy curiosity. And you talked about that. You shared how you would take ideas and you would accept responsibility. And so that to me is an important factor. When you think about that, do you think that that made a difference as an individual contributor to how you were able to garner so much experience and success working at the organization with the people that you express that curiosity to?
No, I think it definitely did because once it was known that I was willing to learn a lot, because someone actually described me like I'm a sponge, right? But though you can only hold so much water, but I'm a sponge. I like to soak stuff up. And so I think once they realize that that's kind of my mentality, I want to know as much as I can because the more I know, the more I can have an impact and understand the pieces and the, the politics of everything and how things flow. I think definitely that was able to kind of give them the ability to say, okay, this is somebody that I want to, pour into and actually make sure that she grows because her growth only helps me, right? Like, I'm not just only, but like, it just helps to make the program better. It makes the team stronger. And I think that having that knowledge that, everybody plays their part. And if, especially when you have a smaller team, you need everyone to be, as the strongest and knowledgeable as possible. So I definitely think that that helped to like streamline some of the stuff that was, or my career in some instances. So
Yeah. And sponge indeed. When I looked at all your credentials and all your certifications, you definitely are a sponge and you took advantage of the opportunity to learn new areas and not just learn them from on the job training kind of thing. You actually went back and got certifications and extended your education to get more degrees because of that healthy curiosity. Now,
mm-hmm.
some of it was tied to your work, but some of it was just your own ambition as well. And so tell us about your credentials because I think they're so impressive that we must hear the list of them that you boast.
Okay. Well, I have 7 professional certifications. Then I have a master's degree in information systems security. But my 7 certifications, 3 of them are security related. 2 of them are real estate related. And then I have one for digital print production. And then one for event management.
And to
So
me, that just reiterates your passion for learning and how you began to fall in love with the work you were doing and wanted to solidify yourself there. The other thing I thought that was really interesting is you found yourself in rooms with people who were solutioning at a broader level, right? And being on the forefront of some things that were happening industry wise and not just necessarily within the confines of what was happening at the company you were in. And to me, that's very impressive. But oftentimes when we find ourselves in those spaces, we become the only, right? We are the only woman in some cases, the only young Black woman in many cases. And sometimes in those rooms, we can be underestimated regarding what we bring to the table. Tell us about how you navigated some of those times when you found yourself being the only in an industry with a lot of people who don't necessarily look like you.
yes, that's probably 80% of my work experience. And so I think that it was more challenging when I was younger. I think that at this point in my career that I haven't had to deal with that too much compared to when I was younger, and I kind of had to like fight to make people understand my value and my potential. I remember this one time there was a supplier who I called and asked them to do something, and normal business situation, hey, I need you to do something, I'm running this program, and I talk to this person quite frequently, and they turned around and emailed my manager and basically said, hey, I understand completely what you want, and I'll get it for you. And my manager sends me the email, he's like, what is he talking about? And I was like, what was the purpose of you going to my manager instead of like, so I ended up calling him, and I was like, I'm not sure where the disconnect is, but I'm managing this program, all the day-to-day operations. If you have a question, you can chat with me about it. There's no need to, and not to say like you can't bring in my manager, but there was actually no need to do it. And he wasn't aware of what we were doing anyway, because it was too low level for him to be concerned with, right? So, but that even happened too. I went to this, another thing that I went to a program at Wharton for a business executives program. And at that time, I probably I was under 30. So I was the youngest person in the room. I was the only Black woman. There were 3 other women, and everyone else was male. I think there was maybe 2 gentlemen from Africa. And so we ended up doing this negotiation exercise, and the gentleman that I was negotiating with, the whole point was to get as much as you can. You had a piece of paper, you had to get as much of your needs for the deal, and I ended up getting everything on my piece of paper. And later he was like, wait, I feel like you like tricked me. And I was like, I think you underestimated me. I think you saw, like, and I said it in a nice way, but I was like, no, I did not trick you. We went through the rules. I have what was on my paper. If you didn't get what you came here to get, I think that's more of an evaluation of what you need to work on, right? So it was a very, kind of chuckled inside, but I was like, you totally saw like a young Black woman, and was just like, oh, I don't really need to try in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very surreal when you have those moments. And I'm so glad that you have the courage to be able to stand in your own power, your own stature, your own resolve when you face them. And I admire that. And it's something that I work with a lot of women to develop. And so I would tell you, don't take that for granted, that you do have it within yourself to stand up for yourself against those headwinds, because they are real. I always love to say there's a power dance going on in corporate America. And the sooner you learn the moves, the better off you're going to be. But sometimes those moves take courage. They take courage to be able to have the resolve to indeed stand up for yourself. Now, you had some more experiences at the workplace. We've been talking, and we have definitely shined a very positive light on what happened for you. But the reality is, at some point in time, there were some hints of microaggression. There were some hints of bias, stereotypes, and prejudice, and even discrimination that began to raise its head of what you had to deal with on the job. It didn't take away from you still rising up to deliver and grow in that place, but those are incredible headwinds. And you had some things said to you that I think were very impactful about references to who you were as a person and what you brought to the table. And some of them even tried to make an attack on your integrity as well. And so, for as much as you're comfortable, tell us about those experiences that happened to you real life in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is until I left that firm, I didn't even know what a microaggression was. I learned it during training at my next company. And it actually, like, I started thinking about all the different scenarios and situations that I had at that first company and things people said to me. And I was just like, oh, that's what happened. Um, and so I probably have tons of examples, and like there's a couple that come to mind. One that someone said to me once, your mom raised you really well. And I'm like, I thought that was so odd. Now I understand it's a microaggression. And I was like, as opposed to what? Like, how would else would my mother raise me? I'm confused. So, very inappropriate comment. Now that I understand, I mean, it seemed odd, but now I understand the complete inappropriateness of it. I was at a meeting one time, and it was a room full of people. It was a whole new group that was coming into our department, and this individual was chatting, and for whatever reason, they decided to say, yeah, I mean, I never thought Anjené would be a vice president. And I was just like, why is that an appropriate comment? Even if you felt that way, like, why is it something that you would voice? And then people I have to work with. And now they're possibly questioning, how my work ethic, or like, well, then how did she get there? And so it was a whole craziness of different commentary that was said, right? So lots of different examples on that part. And it just became more and more evident as time went on that it wasn't actually improving, it was getting worse. And I think too that as I got older, my tolerance for the way people would talk to me or say things to me changed. I wasn't 23 anymore, so I really wasn't willing to let things slide, or I didn't have the naiveness to kind of let it go. So it just ended up being a point where I knew I just wasn't going to go any further at that particular organization. I had learned a ton. I mean, it was 12 years of probably sometimes 80-hour weeks. And so I was doing a lot. I did a lot. I learned a lot. But I knew that personally, it just wasn't the best environment for me anymore.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you found a safe place for yourself and that you prioritized yourself and began to recognize that it had turned toxic for you and that you needed to create some distance between it and not continue to be sacrificial into what the experience had become. And I think, unfortunately, that's more common than not, right? Because when we're in workplace environments, we can start off in one particular vein with a certain community around us, with a certain temperament that we're all vibing with, if I could say it that way. And then when you have certain people begin to make shifts or certain things begin to happen, you can see an erosion with if there's not any intention to make sure it stays healthy. And so I'm glad that you learned, and I'm glad that you can now speak up for yourself in instances where those type of things occur. There was another thing that you called out in your experience that I just want to touch upon, because I think it's extremely important for people who are on a pathway of promotion. You talked about transitioning from non-exempt to exempt, and the reality of I was making all this bank with all this overtime that I was putting in, because you even talked about at one point working, 80-hour weeks. And so when you are in a non-exempt position, that can ring up to make for a lot of healthy paychecks. And so when they approached you with a promotion to a salary level, and you had to then determine whether or not the compensation was good enough. So tell us about that experience.
Um, yeah, that was an interesting day that I remember quite well. And so I don't know the backstory of like how this happened, but basically they were trying to change some people's status. And so I was given this opportunity to get promoted. And with that promotion, I um, I was like, great, I'm very excited to have the promotion. And I was like, well, what does that mean from a monetary standpoint? And the person was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I make X base and I make X in OT. I was like, so if I go into this new role, is there going to be, a pay increase to my base, or, because I mean, I live my life based off of, the OT, which looking back may not be the best idea, but, that's what I was doing at that time. And so the individual went back and was like, oh, I wasn't aware. Let me look into it. And they were like, well, where do you kind of need to lie to feel comfortable? So I had to go back and do some calculations real quick. And I gave a number. And he was like, I'll try to see what I can do. Wasn't the exact number, but it was a good number. And so that was like my first real salary negotiation that I had, because everything before then it was just like, this is what you're getting. I'm like, okay, great, fantastic. And this was a point where I was like, no, this is really going to have a actual dramatic impact on my livelihood and how I live my life. And so it's actually helped me in the future, because since then I've been sure to calculate and have in my back pocket, like, what's my base that I need, like, that I won't even talk to anybody unless they at least hit that number. So it was actually a really great learning experience.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, especially depending on how your career starts and continues upward, they don't fully recognize that leveling off that happens when you move into a salary role and you're no longer getting access to those overtime funds. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up, because as people are looking to accelerate their career, it's important that they understand that up front so that they can understand their number as to what it would take to really begin to live their life, especially if they generate a lot of resources through OT. Now, one of the things we talked about in our meet and greet is through all of this experience, from the time it was good to the time that it took a turn to the time that you even had to make a decision to exit out into some new opportunities, you used the phrase, if I had known, right? And we all say that. It's a point of reflection to say, knowing what I know now, what would I do differently? And so when you think back to the title and where you started, you think back to the relationships that were forged, you think back to some of the contention that you ran into with bias and with discrimination tactics. You think back to some of the hardship that you ran into with clients. What did you learn about yourself in that evolution that you took now from a seat of, if I had known?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things is boundaries. I feel like I had them when I first started when I first started out. And I think as I saw opportunities to grow at a rather rapid pace at that time, and the age that I was during that time period, that I kind of didn't have a lot of boundaries. Everything was work, work, work. And that had a lot of impact on every area of my life. And so I actually started having more boundaries, and that's when some things started changing. And so, like, I wish I had boundaries a little earlier, and there's certain situations that I missed out on personally that I took for I put work over them. And so even now things will come up and I'm like, have a flashback. What's the best way to approach this? Don't do the 30-year-old Anjené thing and be like, oh, I'm gonna do the work thing. So that's one of the biggest things I think that I wish I had done better, was the boundaries thing. That was a really big difference for me, that just took time, and talking to people, and under even some coaching. And so I'm trying to think if there was anything like big fundamental other than that, but it was really that. And then just like what stuff is really important for me to spend my time on, right? So I know that there was some projects or some work that I would do, but looking back, was that really essential? Like, did I need to actually spend as much time as I did working on some of the things I was doing, or trying to centralize some stuff that may not need to be centralized, and like how that impacted me and different relationships within the organization. So
Yeah, that's a good one. And actually, that's a huge one. And the sooner we learn it, the better we can protect ourselves, and not be so sacrificial to just keep giving, giving, giving. Now, at the end of it all, you took a very personal journey to your well-being, and you made some very intentional shifts. And so we definitely are seeing, a more regulated version of you, one who has developed self-care strategies and developed ways to make sure that you are keeping your own priority and self in mind. When you think about how you have evolved, what's important to you now when it comes to taking care of you?
Sleep. That's probably and I definitely during the pandemic it shifted my mindset. In grad school, shifted my mindset around like sleep, and like understanding how much better my days are when I'm having sleep. Like, I may not accomplish as much stuff, but I can feel the difference from a health standpoint. And those the choices around like how important is something. Previously I would try to get everything done and would stay up till 2 a.m. to hold on to something, and still get up at 6 a.m. to get to work. And now it's like, maybe I need to renegotiate that. Maybe it doesn't actually have to be done at this time period, and shifting stuff around. So that's probably one of the biggest things from a self-care standpoint, is just understanding how critical things really are. Like, is what are the consequences if I don't actually get this done right now, compared to what I was thinking? Or, is this something that I just would like to do? Is this something that I owe somebody? And even knowing too, like when I start talking to people about participating in extracurricular activities or doing some one-off, my whole thing is, okay, so what's the time commitment? Because I need to understand how that's going to fit into my life and for how long, and if I'm willing to be okay with that.
Now, you already know it's time for your empowering moment. This is when we take a pause for the cause of jump starting your success. In this segment, we are discovering more about my book, Embrace Your Power and Go. The way that this 30-day journey is designed is each and every day, there is an intention that we take and we focus on for the day. There's a Bible passage that goes along with it that is a promise for us. There is a passage that I have personally penned that is curated to develop the thought more and shift your mindset. And we wrap all that up with an affirmation that you can speak into your life. Now, on top of that, there is a space for you to set goals and capture your thoughts. Now, we are on day number 11 of that journey. And here's the intention that I set for that day. Use time wisely. The Bible passage is teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart full of wisdom. And that's Psalms 90:12. Now, during the course of that day, I really admonish you to take moments seriously, to activate your action and not waste time. The affirmation for the day is this, and I offer it to you now. I commit to making the most of my time. I choose to seek wisdom instead of sinking into worry. As I pray, rest, and plan, I am confident that greater days are ahead of me. And that's what I want for you. I want you to seize the moment of believing what is possible for you. You see, when we do that, that's how we jumpstart our success. When we can see ourselves being successful, we can then take corresponding action to bring it to pass. Now, if this resonated with you, I want to invite you to get a copy of the book. It's easy. Go ahead and put your Prime to work because it's available on Amazon. But more than that, if you know you're ready to take some next steps, you are ready to take corresponding action towards your goals, I want to invite you to set up time with me. I would love to be a part of your success journey. You see, when you forge partnership, it always accelerates progress. But when you forge strategic relationships like the one we would have together, it is going to accelerate your success. Now, the way you access my calendar is you go to www.callwithdenise. You'll get complete access to set up a time that works for you. And at whatever time you set for us, I am going to give you a call and we're going to talk about more of what you want to achieve. So I invite you to do that today. Now let's get back into it. All right, now that we're back, I want to tap into what I call your power leader advice. And this is advice that you would give to women who are facing different scenarios. So the first scenario is this. What's your best advice for women feeling stretched? Either they're stretched by transition, opportunity, or pressure to perform.
To some extent, embrace it. Understand why try to understand why you're being stretched, right? And so, like, is it a good stretch? Like, is it going to actually help you in the future, strengthen whatever needs to be strengthened, resiliency? And I think that is a very marketable skill to be able to have. So I think that any stretch, whether it's a small stretch or a large stretch, is just going to help in the future, but doing it in a way that is healthy, right? So
That's good. What's your best advice for women struggling to fit in at work? They find it hard to be accepted or understood at work.
yeah. First question, like, why do you want to fit in? Like, what is the environment that is going on, and is it even a healthy one that you should fit into? Because yeah, I've been in situations where I'm like, I'm okay with not fitting in. And so just really understanding the reasons why you want to fit in, and then see, what is it that you don't think is fitting, right? And maybe chat with someone around like what's going on, or get some advice around, the culture of whatever environment is happening. So see if that's something that you want to pivot around.
That's good. I like that. What's your best advice for women wanting to advance their career and get to the next level?
Yeah. So I'm all about, 1, 3, 5 year lookouts as far as like where do you want to go? Because if you don't have a sense at least of where you're headed, you're just gonna kind of wander into someone can give you an opportunity that may not even be a good fit for the path that you're trying to go on. So really outlining where you'd like to go, even if it's just very high level concept of what type of opportunities you'd like. And then, find people that have those opportunities and chat with them. They don't have to be at the organization you're at. You can chat with someone who has a title that you like or does the type of work that you like and ask them to just have an informational interview and chat with them, learn about what their journey was, what skills that they had that got them into the position that they are in, and see if that's something that you either have or that you need to work on and what path you need to take to in order to up your skill level.
That's good. Good advice. So, the next section is the 12 power leader skills. And these are things that I think women leaders just need to know how to do, especially in corporate America. I'm not going to ask you all 12. I'm going to have you pick three numbers between 1 and 12. And whatever three numbers you pick, those are the ones I'll have you give advice on.
Okay. 3, 6, and 9.
All right, 3, 6, and 9. So, what's your best advice for how to make allies in high places?
Mm, okay. One thing that I think has helped me is that being involved in special projects, getting out of your comfort zone and getting into different work that gives you an expanded network that will actually give you some exposure, and then be able to have, conversations with people who are typically at a higher in higher in the hierarchy than you are, and even seeing, what your manager or someone you feel comfortable talking to and saying, I'd like to be introduced to X, Y, and Z, and building those relationships with those individuals. Networking is such a key part of business, whatever industry you're in or role that you're in, and getting comfortable with meeting new people, even if they're at a higher level than you, they're just human, and I'm sure that they want to help someone out just as much as um, they've been helped out in their career.
That's so good. And the next one is your best advice for how to take feedback without taking offense.
Um, Feedback. So I would say listen or read the feedback, try to process it, take a moment. Don't immediately react to it. And then if it's just not sitting with you well and you need a little bit more time, I think it's okay to, ask for that time. If you're someone that you're having a in-person or real-time interaction with, say, I appreciate that feedback. I'm gonna sit and process that and get back to you if I have any questions or wanted to discuss this further. And if it's something that's like from an email, a text, or some written communication, sit on it. You don't have to immediately respond. I know sometimes I've gotten something and I'm like, ooh, and then I'm like, let me sit on this for a minute. I might have a different perspective in 12 hours. So, just kind of take a breath.
That's good. What's your best advice for how to leverage your Black girl magic edge and swagger?
I mean, just being yourself, don't hide who you are. I think that can be challenging depending on which, environments you are in, but that's very similar to like trying to fit in question, right? So how important is it to hide who you are and being authentic? Um, and who will like you, and who won't. And just like do your boss thing and execute and have your work product, and can't nobody say nothing about you.
I love it. I love it. It's such an asset. And I don't think we should look at it as anything held against us, right?
Mhm.
All right. So the podcast closeout questions, I've been asking these for a few years now. And so we're going to hear from your experience. What's your life wisdom? What would you tell your younger self about life if you could?
Yeah, it would definitely be about boundaries and about balance. They're very important to establish and for people to know what they are.
I love that. Love wisdom. What would you tell your younger self about love if you could?
Self-love is just as important as external love. And then don't shy away from external love. Embrace all the love that anybody is willing to give you.
So good. And then finally, happiness wisdom. What would you tell your younger self about happiness if you could?
Find things that really bring you joy. There's a lot of stuff in the world that you just can't control, but you can control how you spend your time for the most part. And so find things that really bring you that joyful happiness and do them as much as you possibly can.
That's so good. Feed your joy. Feed your joy. I love it. So, what's next for you, and how can listeners get connected with you?
Yeah. So me, continuing on this career journey of mine, but I also do life coaching. And so that's one big thing for me in my life right now is that I just want to help other people achieve their potential and their ambitions in life and figure out how to make it all work. And so, as far as reaching out, I'm on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and I can be reached at living.ambitiously.coach@gmail.com if anybody would like to chat.
Awesome. I have just one more thing to say to you, Anjené.
Yes.
Success looks so good on you.
Thank you so much. You as well.
Thank you. I just love that many of our experiences often have so many defining moments, like the one that Anjené shared, when someone underestimated what she brought to the table and who she was. We've all experienced that, especially in our journey to success, where they thought we couldn't, but we could, where they thought we wouldn't, but we did, where they underestimated our ability in who we were and what we brought to the table. And what I want to say to you is that you owe it to yourself to make sure that you honor everything about you and what you bring to the table every time. And that's difficult. It's difficult because we often find ourselves in environments that can be a little daunting and overwhelming. We are the only one in the room. We are the only one in the role. We are the only one at the event. We are the only one that looks like us. And in that moment, I want you to embrace your power. I want you to be authentic to who you are. I want you to make sure they never underestimate you again. You see, as your coach, I want to be able to help you navigate situations like that. As your mentor, I want to be able to help you decide how to approach those situations with wisdom. And as your friend, I want to say to you, don't you ever let that happen to you again. I want to see you experience the success that comes with being honorable to who you are. And that's one of the reasons why in this season, I have anchored in on helping women get the career success that they want and deserve. Because many of us face situations where we are underestimated, where we are looked past, and we're not taken seriously for all that we bring to the table. But that won't be the case with you because now you're going to do something differently. You're going to show up. And if you need help, you're going to get the help that's necessary to change the game for you. Now, if you want partnership, I would love to help you on your success journey. And working with me begins with a discovery call. It's really easy to set up time for us to talk. And the reason why I do this is because I am a success girl. I want to make sure that what you're signing up for is going to indeed help you get the results that you desire. And so if you know that you want to get to the next level of leadership, if you know that you want to broaden the scope of your experience to prepare for that increased level and role, or if you know that you want to accelerate your success, then I want to partner with you to do that. Setting up a time with me is really easy. You have complete access to my calendar to set up a time that works best for you. When you go to www.callwithdenise, my calendar will open up for you. You can select the time that works best with your schedule. When you establish a time for us, I'm going to give you a call. That's the easiest way to handle it, is if I call you. You'll have my undivided attention. I'll ask you a series of questions so that I can understand where you're at and what it is that you want to achieve. I will help you get real clear on your best next step. And if it makes sense to work with me, then I will make a suggestion of my services as well. I want you to experience success that resonates with you. I want you to experience what it is to be able to have success on your own terms. I want to help accelerate your success. And so I invite you to book a call with me so that we can talk more. And once you do that, you'll be set up to take your best next step. Now, I want to invite you to join me here next time. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you sharing this. I appreciate you rating this and subscribing to this, because this is a lifeline to help you get the success that you want and deserve. We'll see you next time. Now, if you love this episode, you're going to want to access the free resource I curated just for you. The Power Leader Toolkit is absolutely free, and it includes 3 power-packed career transforming resources that will help you change the game and build the career that you want and deserve. It includes my powerful training, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful Women. Now, you can get your hands on this toolkit right now. And as I said, it's absolutely free. You can access it at www.powerleadertoolkit.live. Again, that's www.powerleadertoolkit.live. And of course, I'll be back next week with more power leader strategies to help you transform your career. But until then, remember to always embrace your power and go.